Welcome everyone, I hope you enjoyed that little showcase, and this is my Dragonborn build in Elden Ring. I've been noticing there is a severe lack of actual unique and cool concepts on YouTube for builds and Rivers of Blood, and I wanted to show new concepts and builds that you can use. For the Dragonborn build, we're going to be mainly a Faith and Arcane split hybrid. This is because the Dragon Communion seal will be scaling off of both of those stats, in particular your Arcane. And yes, it means that as much as I complain about them, I do have a pocket Rivers of Blood. Alright, let's get into the video. Keep in mind this build is going to be very needy and very particular in how you play it, because you're going to be building your Mind, Faith, and Arcane kind of equally while maintaining good health and endurance so you can wear the armor set. Like I previously mentioned, your highest stat is ideally going to be your Arcane, followed by your Faith. This is so that you can use your Dragon Communion spells and use it really well because it has an S scaling in Arcane, making that really well for our build. What this also means is that we can infuse our weapons with Occult, which will give it scaling in Arcane to help circumvent our low strength and dexterity stats. Now for the main stats, I put 43 into Vigor, 17 in Mind, and 16 into Endurance. The 22 you see on screen for the Mind is because I'm wearing the Marika Sword Seal, and that's been helping me to boost my stats as needed, but you don't have to wear that if you don't want to. Again, it's pretty flexible. This just allows me to use a little bit more Dragon Cast, just a little more frequently. And the rest of the stats, I'm rocking 12 Strength, 20 Dexterity, 14 Intelligence, 31 Faith, and 46 Arcane. The reason why my Strength and Dexterity stats are kind of low is because I'm only using a select few amount of weapons. This is so I can pour most of my points into my Arcane and Faith because I'm using mostly my Dragon spells for this build. My overall advice for making any build is that you always want to upgrade your stats to the lowest minimum requirement for the weapons you want to use, just so you can have more points to put into other stats that you want to upgrade. For the main weapons on the build, I'm using the Noble's Sword, the Golden Epitaph, the Claymore, and the Highland Axe. The Highland Axe is going to be boosting your Breath and Roar attacks, which is actually going to scale with your Dragon spells, and as well as your Beast's Roar, aka Fusarda, just so you can be doing a lot more damage with your spells compared to if you weren't using it. So I like to use that as a pretty standard one-handed moveset axe that I can use. I also dual wield the Noble's Sword with the Golden Epitaph because it reminds me of the Dawnbreaker's sword, and I'm not gonna lie, they look pretty dope. The dual handing is going to be doing a lot of damage because one weapon is going to be doing Faith damage and the other is going to be doing regular damage. So you can get that sort of split action where you can do both damage types to people. And for our last weapon, we're using the Claymore because they do have a couple of great swords in Skyrim, so I just picked the most standard one I could find. And the Claymore is going to be doing pretty good damage, it's just a reliable great sword that you can use, and I just slapped it on here. For the Talismans, we are using the Erdtree Favor +2, just so we can have extra health and stamina, Marika Sword Seal so that we'll get a +5 to our Faith, Arcane, and Mind at the cost of -10% on our Absorption, the Radagon Icon so our Dragon spells come out faster, and finally the Flocksman Talisman so our incantations with our Dragon spells will do that much more damage. And of course the seal we will be using is the Dragon Communion. It boosts our Dragon spells and it will be scaling off of S in Arcane and B in Faith at +10. For the main armor set, I did my best to match the armor set found on the main cover for Skyrim, and this is how it turned out. I'm currently wearing the Veteran's Helmet, the Elden Lord chest and gauntlets, and finally the Radahn boots. Not only will this give us back some of that defense that we lost with the Marika Sword Seal, but it also looks pretty decent and pretty close to the armor set. For the main Ash of War, we will be using the Beast's Roar. It's the closest thing I could find to Fusarda from Skyrim. You will be receiving that after you give the Beast Clergyman and Bestial Sanctum 4 death roots, and you can find them scattered throughout catacombs after you kill the bosses throughout the game. If you'd like to know more about how the Beast's Roar damage works, I made a whole separate video on it. For the basics of it, it will be scaling off of your base damage of your weapon, so weapons with higher base damage will do more with the Beast's Roar. Plus, it will scale off of the Highland Axe's innate ability, as well as the Beast's Roar Talisman and the Shard of Alexander, which I highly recommend using as well. Not to mention your Dragon spells will also be receiving that buff. Finally, for the Dragon spells themselves, I'm using Akil's Flame, Borealis' Mist, Placidusax's Ruin, and Greyel's Roar. I tried to stay faithful to the Dragon shouts in the game, while also mixing in some of the actual fun spells from this game, so I kept in Fire Breath and Frost Breath, which represents Akil's Flame and Borealis' Mist, while also using Placidusax's Ruin and Greyel's Roar because it just looked cool and I felt like it would be a shout in the game, so I just put it in. I can honestly say this is probably one of the strongest builds I've ever made, and it just shreds in PvP and PvE. In my experience, if you have the time to use a dragon spell, the opponent will just die. You just do so much damage and it's continuous, it's just going to do so much, and 9 times out of 10 the opponent will just not have enough health to live the attack. My favorite shout in particular is Placidusax's Ruin. It actually produces a shockwave right as you use the spell, and it's so fast, opponents just can't react to it. And the laser that comes afterward, it just does so much damage. People usually don't live after you cast this next to them, and it's just a lot of fun. The Beast Roar Ash of War is also going to be helping you a lot because it can help to punish people who are far away from you and just rack on extra damage while you fight. Greyl's Roar is also very nice because it looks similar to Egheel's Flame, so you can use that to mix people up, and it creates a shockwave that's kind of similar to Fusro Da in that it pushes people back, and it will actually give people a status debuff where they will be having reduced defenses and attack damage, which is kind of wild that you can do that to people. Not to mention the insane damage it does, which hits people for around 700 to 800 damage. Some things to keep in mind for this build is that because we have kind of low mind, you can really only use one dragon spell fully at a time before you'll have to refill on your Ashen Estus. If you want to, you can just rebalance the build and pour more points into mind if you find yourself using your dragon spells more, but I put those points that I would put into mind into my vigor just so I wouldn't be dying in a couple of hits. You can also put on the Great Shield Talisman to kind of negate the defense drop that we have, because the absorption, especially on lightning, is kind of low, so you can put that on to kind of circumvent if you feel like you're dying too quickly. The build also doesn't have as much stamina as some other builds might, so you will have to get a little used to just playing around with low stamina, but once you get used to it, it's not really that bad, and in my experience, I'd rather max out my damage than have more stamina, because I can always just manage it and play better. Using this build in PvE is also very good. For me, I personally like to use the Hidden Cerulean tier and the Flame Shrouded Crack tier because it will power up Egheel's Flame, and I use that on a majority of the bosses and it just does really well. So you can just keep that in mind if you're looking for some mixtures you want to use in PvE. Those are the two that I recommend the most. Now, keep in mind, I have killed a majority of the bosses on my new game already, so I really only had the Commander Neil to test this out on, but I can assure you that this build will be just as fine later on, if not better than what you're seeing right now. And ladies and gentlemen, that will be the end of the video. I appreciate it if you watched it this far. This has been a very fun build to make, and I hope that you guys can use it too. If this helped you out, squeeze the hell out of that like button and subscribe so that I will know that you guys want to see more unique build showcases like this. And I'd also like to give a very genuine thank you to everyone who's been watching me so far on this channel. It's been making me incredibly happy to just make videos for you guys, and I'm just going to keep it up and do better. Have a great rest of your day/night. See you later. Love and light.